Good morning, everyone. Thank you for hanging out this morning while you're getting all set up for your day. We are having our roundtable discussion. I'd like to introduce our host, Tyler Sawchuk. Good morning, Tyler.
Satchwill, come on now.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know why I thought that.
There is a Sawchuk somewhere. We have a Sawchuk. But good morning. Thank you, everyone, for coming to our first roundtable discussion. It's Saturday morning. Hope you got coffee. Hope you got questions. We've got a few other friends here with us, hailing from Red Deer. We've got Collin Örthner. Shauna can bring him in. There we go. Hey, Collin, how you doing?
Good morning. Excellent.
And over in Lethbridge, we've got James.
Good morning, everybody.
There we go. And over in Sherwood Park today, but he's a bit of a wandering spirit, we got Burke.
Good morning.
So,
all right, I'll let you gentlemen take the table.
Right on. Good morning, everyone. So, we just wrapped up Wildlife Month at McBain Camera. I hope everyone got a chance to submit some wildlife photos. If you don't, you actually still have a couple of days to do it. We got our ticker tape at the bottom there. Remember that you can enter for a chance to win $1,000 off your next Tamron lens purchase. Let's get this all started. I think a question that I really wanted to ask you guys is I think a really common question is like kind of what got you started in photography and everything, but I'm a little bit more interested in what made you guys realize that like wildlife photography was something that you guys were particularly interested in. We'll start with Burke.
I've done a little bit of everything. I did public relations and media photography way back when, and then I did studio work. I've always been an outdoors guy since I was a kid, and I got tired of having to deal with other people, doing photography of people, shooting with
the birds
models.
Talk back less.
Yeah. So it just was sort of a natural progression. My view is that I would be quite content to spend a whole day out in the woods somewhere without seeing any other people. And if I get some good shots, that's great. And if not, my spirit is still soothed by being outdoors in the wilderness. I have the luxury of technically being retired, and it's a great way to get exercise, fresh air, and create some cool images. And my big thing is I tend to focus on getting up close and personal with the wildlife, so that people who may otherwise never get a chance to really see the details and that sort of stuff can appreciate what's out there.
Right on. And Collin, you're more of a landscape guy as far as I know, but you've got some wildlife stuff too. Is there what's sort of the big differences for you between like wildlife and landscape photography?
Well, for me, I'm more of an opportunistic feeder. I will go after whatever I can find, but lately it's more landscapes. But I used to have a big lens with me all the time, and that way, and growing up, I was taught to have a huge appreciation for nature. So I've always enjoyed, looking for birds, looking for butterflies, that kind of thing. And it's a totally different way of shooting in my mind. If you go out after wildlife, it's almost a specific reason for being somewhere. Whereas with landscapes, I find I can go just about anywhere and find something, a composition that fits my eye,
Right on. And James, how about you? Like, was there any particular moment where, you kind of fell in love with wildlife photography? Was there like an animal that you were taking a picture of, or a situation you were in?
Yeah, I mean, similar to Burke, I'm just an avid outdoorsman, so it's kind of been pretty well in line with all my other hobbies, hiking, fishing, and stuff like that. And I kind of started to see more and more animals when I was out. And I like Collin. I'm more of a landscape photographer before this, but now most days I'm 2 times a week I'm out shooting wildlife. So but like once I started seeing more stuff out hiking and biking and stuff like that, I decided to carry a longer lens with me, backpack, and then I just started going out to shoot wildlife exclusively. So yeah, I just like being out again, like Burke, just out in the wilderness is a good day for me. It doesn't have to be with a camera, but it's nice to bring one. So
I find that people are often just sort of drawn to animal photos too, right? Like especially if you can get a lot of the detail, if you can sort of get a feel for like the texture of the animal too, then I think it draws a lot of attention. And I don't know, I think we've got a big benefit of being around so much of this great stuff in Alberta. You know, especially Jame clusters there. Oh, there you go. And yeah, so I don't know. Have we got any questions or anything yet from Shauna, or nothing yet? It looks like. So let's move into just people who are interested in just starting out wildlife photography. You know, if anyone has any questions, please fire them off. Shauna will forward them over to us, and we can get into specifics. But just sort of general tips for anyone who wants to sort of get into the field. What kind of camera gear do you have to bring? What kind of not camera gear do you have to bring? Like if you're going out and you're packing stuff in your camera bag, you got your camera gear, and what else? You know, whoever wants to start.
Okay, well, I have this, I don't even know what it's called. I think some people would call it like a stadium seat. I got it at Cabela's. It's a 1.5 inch thick foam, a little bit bigger than your butt pad. Has a loop on it with a carabiner that I put on it, and I clip it onto my backpack because I'm really a big proponent of getting eye level with your subject. So if you're shooting birds and small animals, you tend to either be sitting or kneeling or lying. And at my age, having that nice soft pad that is also doesn't get your butt wet, you drop it down, sit on it or kneel on it, and it's a lot more comfortable. It's worth its weight in gold.
And I mean, let's face it, 90% of safe and respectful nature shooting is playing the waiting game. So having a comfortable and dry seat is probably super beneficial. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. Collin, you got anything to add to that? Any gear you like to bring out when you're doing this kind of thing?
Definitely a thermos of coffee, because I mean, if you're going to go out after wildlife, usually you're out pretty darn early, and dress appropriately, because again, if you're sitting around waiting for wildlife, you think it's warm out, but I'll tell you what, if you're just standing in the same spot for 40 minutes, you're going to chill down, right? So you got to dress appropriately, and don't be scared to get soaking wet or muddy. It's going to happen. It's just a requirement, right? Yeah.
And what about your favorite pieces, James?
Yeah, kind of along the same lines as these guys. I mean, if you're going to invest a lot of money into your gear, yeah, like I said, clothing is a big part of it. So that's, I mean, half the battle too. Good shoes, good, somewhat weatherproof pants, and a jacket is going to go a long way. Even a headlamp can be nice if you're starting really early. But yeah, I think for the most part, a good pair of shoes is probably my favorite part if you're going to be walking around a lot. So yeah, that'll be my number one for sure.
Stuff to avoid. You know, I think a lot of people, they go into the woods and you know, they get bored, so they want to do things like you know, bring their music or things like that. I know that, you know, you probably don't want to bring your Bluetooth speaker if you're doing wildlife photography. Anything you think you probably should leave at home?
I would say only take what you essentially need, because if you're carrying too much gear, it's going to just impede you from moving around, and you're going to get tired faster. Just take your camera and a lens and maybe your tripod, and make sure you have your thermos. But yeah, other than that, like, just keep it simple, I think. Yeah.
And I would strongly recommend you don't take earbuds or anything like that with you. Just yesterday morning, I was out really early in the morning, focusing through my long lens on one bird, and I heard a little bit of a splash. Startled me. I wasn't expecting it. And there was a duck that had landed a couple of yards away from me on the pond, one that I had never photographed up close before. And had I had earbuds in listening to my favorite tunes, I would never have realized he was there. And that was just a positive situation. The flip side of that is if it would have been a bear coming up behind me and I didn't hear him, not so good.
Well, I mean, that's a pretty good segue right there into our next question for safety tips. Oh, we're getting a weird echo from somewhere. Let's see if we can mitigate that. Greg asks, do you have any safety tips for shooting out in the wild?
Well, Burke just covered one. Don't wear the earbuds. I mean, that's a great tip. But and what James was saying about having good shoes, wear appropriate clothing, right? I mean, that's really, like, I've gone out when it's 30 below and blowing, and you can't just do that lightly. You got to think about that and be careful, because otherwise you could get yourself in serious trouble. So proper footwear for the occasion, proper headgear if you need it, etc. So I find the clothing part of this can be quite important as a safety feature.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to be waiting around for a long time, but you obviously are going to need something where you can keep yourself safe. You know, twisting your ankle out in the woods is going to be the worst. So wear something comfortable, wear something firm.
And to further that same point that you just made, is let somebody know where you're going. So if you do get in trouble, someone is expecting to hear from you. So, and they're going to know where you're at. So
Yeah, especially if you're going out solo, for sure.
Yeah.
Bear spray
bear
also.
spray.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can get the
I have
little
a
belt.
fancy chest harness from a company in Calgary called Hiker. It's awesome. And right on the front of your chest, so doesn't interfere with your gear, doesn't interfere with your backpack, and you have it out at a moment's notice.
All right. Let's see. Any more comments or questions coming in? No, that's
So
We lost Tyler. Oh, here he comes.
that's what happens when I press the wrong button.
So I do go out to BC to shoot grizzly bears in the fall, and there I always have someone else with me to watch my back.
Good. And James,
especially around small streams. Like if you're around a stream in a little canyon, you won't hear that bear, and he's not going to hear you, right? Because there's too much water. So you got to be very, very aware of what's going on around you.
and to be totally honest, especially if I'm alone, water is one thing that I do not mess with. I think everybody really, really underestimates the ferocious power of water. You know, especially if you're alone. Don't go in the stream. Don't go in the river.
No.
But probably just don't do it.
The other big one is people stopping at the side of the road and then they step backwards into live traffic. See it every summer in the Rockies.
All right.
And to that point, you might add, don't try and get close to these things. I mean, these are wild animals and they can be extremely unpredictable. You got to treat them with utmost respect.
Yeah. You're on their turf. This is you're coming into their home, and I mean, especially if everyone's disturbing them, they're gonna start moving out. They're gonna start getting hurt. You know, we want to keep them around for the next photographers too. So,
Part of that is in my view, there's three parts to wildlife photography. One is the equipment, one and knowing how to use it. One is patience and luck, which is part and parcel. The other one is knowing your subject. You have to take the time to learn about the animal you're trying to shoot so that you can tell, is it getting stressed? I mean, I have gotten quite close to bears, but I have been around bears so much in my life that I can tell the minute their ears perk up in a certain way and they make certain movements, you're getting too close. It's time to back off. Same with moose, with elk, an elk with a calf is just as dangerous as a grizzly bear. She will protect her young, and you watch, and you learn the body signals when you are getting to the point where you're too close. And if you don't understand those things, then at that point, don't try to get close. Stay away until you have developed the knowledge base that you can get a little bit closer.
Yeah. Just keep your distance.
It's not always. For sure. Sorry, Tyler. It's not always all about safety either. It can be like even small birds. You can tell when they're agitated and they're bothered by you being too close to their nest or something like that. So it's time to back off and let them have their space, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
That's where the patience comes in, is if you move into an area and you just sit and wait, let things get back to normal, then you get your shots. Let the animals come closer to you as opposed to you trying to get closer to the animal, which will spook them.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest points in wildlife photography, really. It's just patience. You're going to get a lot more shots sitting and waiting than you are pushing into an animal's comfort zone. So,
is that the trick? Someone should have told me that before we shot. Yeah.
My rule of thumb is about 20 minutes. It takes at least 20 minutes for an environment to settle down after you enter.
Yeah.
And that's if you stop moving.
So the speaking of chasing animals, which don't do that, but the squirrels gave me a little bit of a challenge. And what about you guys? Was there any particular animal where either are you still chasing it, or was there one where you finally got the shot and that is the what is the animal that has challenged you the most?
I don't think you ever think you have the shot. You're always looking to get a better shot, and that keeps you going out. It's addictive.
I think every photographer has gone through their Lightroom film strip just in despair, just looking for the perfect one.
Yeah. Challenging animals, elk are extremely skittish. I mean, if you go into the Banff for Jasper Town site, you can shoot them there, but that's not wildlife photography in my eyes. But even at Elk Island, trying to get a decent shot of an elk, I still haven't got one because they are so skittish. By the time I've spotted them and gotten my camera up, I get great butt shots, but that's about it. It really is. I have to make a point of going and sitting much longer in an area where they travel and wait for them to come to me.
All right. James, how about you?
I think recently in my local wetlands, at least, it's been russet-belted kingfisher that's been very skittish, and it's been 3 or 4 years now, and I haven't got a shot I would put on my wall of him yet. So, it's one of those things where I just can't get close enough to him. So, without pushing into boundaries and being too forward with him. But that's probably the biggest one so far. So.
You got to get Burke's seat. You got to get yourself.
Exactly. Yeah, but like we were discussing before, getting eye line. So I'm trying to get on the shore with him, and then maybe if he's hunting or feeding as well too, trying to get into the water shot. But thankfully elk are pretty easy in Waterton here in the national park. They tend to lots of big mating. So those ones haven't been too bad. But kingfishers for sure. So.
Right on. Yeah. And Collin, what's your white whale?
Well, I mean, I have a huge love of owls. So going back a few years ago, I was looking for great gray owls. And sometimes I'll be out for a whole day and you won't even find one. But then I was invited along with government biologists. They were going to go out tagging owls, look for them, count them, tag them, measure them, weigh them. And we saw 19 in one day. And I got to hold one as they were measuring it and doing what banding it and doing all that. It was, I got some shots of the owls, but I'll tell you what, being that close to just an amazing creature was eye-opening. It was amazing.
Yeah.
You
No
know,
kidding. And
but yeah, we did get some pretty good shots of the owls. Obviously, when you see 19 of them, you're going to have some decent compositions and whatnot. But yeah, it was an amazing day to be out.
yeah. And Burke, is
Yeah,
that
so-
wildlife photography?
It's animal photography.
Right.
Whatever.
Right.
Like one of my challenges is snowy owls.
Right.
If you want to have patience when it's minus 30 and the wind is blowing, you're really hardcore if you're willing to stand out there. And
Yep.
yeah, on a good day you'll find a few if you know roughly where to go, but they tend to just sit there, and so you can only take so many shots of an owl just sitting, and that's where the patience then comes in. Is if you wait long enough, it will do something. But the question is, who can handle the cold longer, the owl or you? I'm trying to share a photograph here. I'm not sure if it's going to work. Where basically the owl is, let me see, bring it over.
Yeah, we'll see him up on the pole there.
Can you see? Yeah, so I mean, that was about 30 minutes in the cold waiting for him to bring that one leg up with its 4 talons showing and scratching his chin.
Right.
It is more interesting than just sitting upright on the pole, but it takes a great deal of fortitude to brave the cold long enough,
And patience.
and then be focused that when it actually does something, you're ready to take the shot, and not that you've been distracted by some other noise and you look away at that one moment where something happens. And that's part of wildlife photography. You miss a lot more great shots than you ever get, because it just takes a split second for that owl to launch itself off the pole, for whatever, the animal to do something different.
Right.
Yeah, Burke,
So-
how often have you turned your head just for that moment, and you go back and the thing's gone?
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to pay attention all the time.
You scratch your nose, you move your fingers in your mitt because they've gone numb, and you look back and it's gone.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. And
Yeah.
If you're really a wildlife photographer, you stick it out, you stay another half hour, and hope something else happens, instead of giving up and going home.
And have a itchy trigger finger. You got to be ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, get and take lots of photos. The more photos you take, the better. I mean, it's we're in that digital age now. Just keep shooting, and you'll get something that turns out pretty well. Here we go. That looks like we're getting into some beef here. Craig wants to know: do fish count as wildlife?
Fish in the wild or wildlife?
But fish in Greg's aquarium, not so much.
No.
Okay. But I mean, yeah, I've seen some great shots of leaping fish, which I would stand no chance of identifying. It's a salmon. And
It's definitely wildlife.
That's absolutely wildlife photography. I would say that it is. I think it's a pretty unanimous. I'm seeing nodding. So, oh man, I totally had a question that I wanted to ask you guys, and now it's just it's flown away on me. Let me see here. I had something all lined up too. Darn it.
Did my fish show up? I was posting a photo of a fish.
Oh no, we didn't see
I
the
didn't see
fish.
it, no.
I didn't see the fish.
I'll try and find it here again.
Yeah. Let's get that going.
Just got to get it figured out. Share screen. How's that?
Oh yeah, there we go. Yeah,
There
I
you
would
go.
say that's a wildlife shot. That's
Sure.
a life in the wild doing its wild things.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah, that's sort of the I enjoy the kind of wildlife photography that shows an animal in its environment. Where does it live? What's it do? Right.
Right. Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, here's a question for all of you. Actually, I totally don't know what I was going to ask. It's a question for all of you, and I guess I want to start with James. Actually, how in your library of sort of successful wildlife photos that you would say that you're actually like proud of and that you would print and put on your wall, how many of them would you say are like sort of like right place, right time, happy accidents, and how many of them would you say where you sort of went out with a purpose and you you weren't necessarily looking to get the heron, but you were setting up to do some wildlife stuff today?
Yeah, I would say for me at least, it's probably 50-50. Like I said, I go out quite a bit, but if I know, like, there's blue herons at our local wetlands quite often later in the summer, and often I'll go down 5 days in a row and just wait for him to pull the pike out and get that shot of him putting it down his throat. So, but yeah, I think 50-50, and then sometimes you just get lucky. Like the other day, I had some common terns that were hunting and some osprey that were hunting too. So, but then I went out the next day and there's nothing. So, it's one of those things where, I would say 50-50 for me. And then obviously the light plays a big role in it too. So time of day can be a pretty handy thing as well too. So if you don't have the time to get out, sometimes you're stuck with harsher light, but yeah, 50-50 for me at least. I don't know what it is for the rest of the guys, but.
Collin, how about you? Are you, is it, are you, would you say that you get a lot of happy accident wildlife photos, when you're out doing the landscape stuff, or is it because you brought out the 500 mil today and when they're where they're going to be at and you're parking there?
I'm probably like 95 and 5%. 5% where I've planned and 95% where it's the happy accident and I come across something in the right conditions and try and capture it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I don't usually plan to be out shooting wildlife. I used to do that a little bit more, but being that I'm out more for landscapes now, it happens to be it'll be a happy accident if I catch something.
And Burke, I have my suspicions that you sort of have your pie charts just got the colors flipped around.
No, I mean it really is both, in that I usually set out to go and shoot something, and then the lucky accident is when out of the 200 shots that I take of whatever it is, there's one that really jumps out, where you just happen to hit the shutter at that right moment where instead of just a nice photograph, it becomes a really cool photograph. So let's try this here. Hang on. Where am I? There we go. Here, share. You see that?
That's a great one. Yep.
So, I mean, I got lots of shots of that lesser yellow legs, but this one here, where you've got the drops in midair and the water coming off its bill, it makes for a more interesting shot than him, striding along a log or standing at the edge of the pond. And I probably took 100 shots of this guy. And there's that one where there's those extra elements. So, is that a lucky accident or is it patience and good timing? It's a little bit of all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the aligning stars, I suppose. So, I mean, what's money being no object? It can be a somewhere you've been or haven't been, or like an animal that you shot or haven't shot, but like, what would be the one place that you would just love to go to, like the aim being wildlife photography? Yeah, we'll start with Burke.
The high Arctic
Like
to
your
shoot
bucket list,
muskox. That would be
Okay.
high on my bucket list.
Yeah, get those. They get some. You get that very dramatic mist and the ice coming off of them and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of mine. I'm not big on heat, so tropical stuff doesn't really appeal to me. But yeah, that would be high on my bucket list.
How about you, James?
Yeah, I would say Africa for sure. I mean, the variety of animals there is incredible. I also don't really like the heat, but I think the opportunity would be, I mean, amazing for sure. So,
Absolutely. And how about Collin?
I think I'm big into prairie life, but I think I would change it up and maybe hit Mongolia. I think that would be sort of like what we have here, but in a whole different environment. I think that would be quite amazing to see, both for landscapes and for wildlife. I think it'd be fabulous.
Is there like a Mongolian ringed lemur, or something along those lines that you're seeing that you're just going, oh man, I want that? No,
but they do have. If I could say the word right, I think it's called the Przybylski horse, which is a wild horse that runs. I think that would be quite something to try and capture out on the open steppes or whatever. It would be amazing to be there.
Right.
The Eagle Festival would be cool too.
very cool. Yeah.
And I think we already did the what animal challenges us the most, the Moby Dick. Yeah, we did that question.
If I can, maybe.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll share a photo and I can tell you a quick story about a difficult.
Please.
Yeah, I just gotta.
Oh, if it was a challenging photo, even if it's something that we've already gone over, we can touch back on it for sure.
Yeah.
If you got a story,
bear with me for a minute.
Yeah, please.
It'll just take a second. Okay, got it open. I'm used to Zoom now, not this. I've learned Zoom over the months.
Yeah, for the
well, bear with
travel.
Me. You go on. I'll try and get onto it here.
Yeah, I can fill it in. I spent quite a bit of time down in Southeast Asia, and one of my biggest regrets is that I was not really into photography at the time. So, I have all these memories of going to go see all these awesome places and all these awesome animals and stuff, and never had a camera with me, and that hurts me deep in here. So yeah, I would really, really like to go back there and hang out with some elephants or something again.
It is also a rule for wildlife photographers: when your camera is not ready is when you see the best wildlife.
Absolutely.
You're driving along and the camera is in the back of the car. You step out of the cabin you're staying in to run an errand, and you don't take your camera with you, and the wildlife walks across your path.
Bam, Bigfoot.
Yeah.
So can you now see the ducks?
We've got a big gallery.
Yeah.
We've got your animals full there. Yeah.
How's that?
You just have to take off full screen
mode. Now can we see it?
Just your gallery still, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't know. I've tried everything here that I can try. I don't know what else to do with it. So.
Well, that's all right. We can we'll maybe throw them up on the website or something. Throw them up on the YouTube video. We can show some things off when.
But I could tell the story
later. Absolutely, please.
I just wanted to catch some mallards in flight, and of course, they're a long way off. Like you think, oh, they're quite close, but they're not. They're quite a ways away, and they're really not a huge animal. So I was using a micro four thirds camera at the time, and I put a 500mm mirror lens on, which is now a 1000mm lens on that camera, and it's a manually focused lens. So you'd see the ducks start off, and I'd whip the camera up to you can't even find them. I spent hours, and I think I got two shots, and the only way it just pure luck that when I raised my camera, they were in the viewfinder already, and then I hit go and focused through them as they flew. So I knew at 1000mm that hopefully one frame is going to catch them in focus. I think I got two. in hours of shooting. Yeah.
Yikes. Yeah.
I wish I could
Birds
choke
and
you.
flight-
Sorry.
Birds and flight is the ultimate challenge for a wildlife photographer.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. Yeah, I every once in a while I'll be just kind of practicing it with one of the sky rat seagulls that we get in the city here, and you just get that split second moment as the viewfinder blacks out where you just that you got that thing perfectly, and that's always very, very satisfying. That's my favorite moment in photography, just that microsecond before you lose everything in the viewfinder, but there's a confidence there. Oh, I love that. Oh.
I think, Tyler, you mentioned light at one point, and the whole idea of wildlife photographers getting up early and that sort of thing. It really is critical, because the best light is at the beginning and the end of the day. And let me see if I can get this to go.
Yeah, the sun's really low in the sky. You're getting nice long shadows that are typically a little more diffuse.
Yeah,
Great
or
colors.
in
Yeah.
cases like this, can you see the bird?
Almost. We
Shauna?
haven't got it put up yet. I think we're waiting on Shauna to actually throw it up there for us.
Okay, hang on. And now
Oh, that's Shauna.
there.
It's a scared looking Shauna.
I just wanted to let you know it hasn't popped up yet. Oh, I know. I'm like that in the mornings. Here.
Is it there now?
There we go.
There we
Yep.
go, yep.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So this is all about the light. Right? The
Mhm.
big problem with shooting birds during the middle of the day is that their underside will always be in the shadow because the sun is up above them. So this was
Right.
taken
Yep. Okay.
at like 6:30 in the morning. The sun is coming almost horizontal across the sky. And then it's just a matter of waiting for him to turn to expose himself to the sun. And then you get all the detail in the feathers, which makes for a much more dramatic shot than having the face illuminated, but the underside basically dark in the shadows because the light is already too high in the sky.
Yeah, you've got good shadows and good highlights there, and really kind of showing everything off, all the feathers and all the patterns in them and everything. That's a great one.
Yeah,
I
and
like
that's just
the tail feathers will stand out there.
Yeah, so that's the directionality of the light that makes that shot.
Right. And it's I think early morning, late in the evening is good for light. It's good for animal behavior time. They're typically up earlier and starting to get a little more active when it's cooler in the day. So
Really, like high cloud, thin overcast days are fantastic as well too. Kind of that natural diffusion really helps.
For your more terrestrial wildlife, yeah, absolutely. It's I've had some pretty frustrating shots where it's such a clear day that the shadows being cast is just my shadows are black and my highlights are blown out, but you get those nice diffuse days and the dynamic range on the camera can handle everything a lot better, and you get an evener photo and it just looks a lot nicer for sure.
Yep, nature's diffusion panel.
Yep.
Yeah, nice overcast days. They're good for shooting those land animals for sure. Let's check to see if we have any questions here. Not seeing anything there.
We just lost him.
There's
Hey,
the
hit
eject
the
button.
wrong
Mid
button.
sentence, yeah.
All right.
He
Shauna's
hit the
back,
red
though.
button again, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
I gotta stop pressing that button.
You
I don't
do.
know. It's the color of it. It looks right.
Let
I
me
want
guess,
it
it's
more.
red.
No, it's not that one. I think I'm actually hitting the login button. I don't really know why. I think it's too close to the chat panel. So, yeah. One thing that I want to talk about is, I have been people who come into the 107th Avenue store. Oh wait, no, hang on. Before I do that, we got a question from Renee. What's the one that got away? What is the one that what's the one that's still keeping you up at night? What's the one that is still breaking your heart and leaves that bitter taste in your mouth? You can still see it galloping away on the horizon.
I missed a black-necked stilt, which for a red deer is kind of a rare bird. And James is probably used to seeing him in southern Alberta, but up here we just don't hardly ever get to see him. And I was out photographing some birds at one of the sloughs, and a buddy of mine phoned me on my cell, and he goes, "Where are you at?" And so I told him. He says, "Well, I'm going to come down and meet you." So I see him park his vehicle, and he's walking along the trail along the slough. And he stops and he's photographing some birds. And he finally comes over and I said, "What did you see over there?" And he goes, "Oh, I don't know, just some bird." I said, "Well, let me see the shot." And it's a black-necked stilt, right? I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" It's like right behind me over here. And so we went back over, and yeah, no, they were nowhere to be found. I've never seen one here again since. But he didn't even know what it was, and nailed this beautiful photo of it just by happen chance that he was there.
Yeah. How about you, James? Is there anything that you've seen around? Like Waterton's got a lot of really great stuff, but they.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, for me at least, anyway, hummingbirds are just, I don't know why, they're just never around when I need them. So without a feeder, at least anyway, and yeah, you kind of have to be in kind of the foothills for that stuff. So yeah, I still haven't really gotten a shot. I'm super happy with those. So. Mm-hmm. And then kind of like lots of predator birds hunting and that kind of thing. There's a few that I would like to get more shots of, but yeah, with time.
Burke, what's the one that got away for you?
The side of the road, looking in one direction, taking pictures. Car comes in the other direction, pulls up behind me, and the couple look at me and they go, "Did you get a picture of the otter that crossed the road behind you?"
No. Yeah. I've actually seen.
Yeah, no, I didn't.
There was some kind of otter, like some kind of small pack. I saw them in the river a couple of years ago in the North Saskatchewan. I thought that was the weirdest thing. I had never seen that before. But apparently they are reasonably common coming up here. I had no idea.
They're coming back.
Yeah, that blew my mind. So my role. Oh yeah, please. Yep.
Well, just a quick vignette. It wasn't. I used to run a photo lab when I lived in Drumheller years ago, and a fellow brought in a roll of film, processed it out, and he had a picture of a black bear in the Badlands. And I'm saying, well, like, where were you? Like, I'm thinking he must be, I don't know, somewhere in the States, maybe like South Dakota, or I don't know, somewhere else. And he goes, "Oh, this is just right down by East Cooley." I'm like, seriously? That thing would have had to walk down the river valley right through Drumheller and downstream. I mean, that would have been an amazing thing to try and photograph. Be pretty rare.
Yeah, I mean, that's a right place, right time situation. That's one of the. Yeah, that's a lucky shot. Holy smokes!
Yeah.
And I mean, speaking of photo labs, I have been shifting things a little bit. My role at 107th Avenue has changed somewhat. Regulars there have probably noticed that I'm not really behind the sales counter very much anymore. I am doing mostly printing in the back. And I'm seeing a lot of wildlife photos come in. Everyone's getting their photos in the past couple of years printed up, and I'm printing on a bunch of different stuff. What is your favorite printing medium for doing wildlife photography? Start with Collin.
When you say medium, like final product on the wall.
Yeah, like if you've got a killer wildlife shot, like do you really like to lean toward like canvas? I know we do like metal printing.
I'm not like the metal. I think is not for wildlife in my mind. I like canvas. I like the canvas.
I feel the same way.
Yeah. And I think they just look stunning on the wall. So we've done that here, and for the last month, we've had up about, I don't know, 7 or 8 canvas wraps of staff wildlife photos, and yeah, they get quite a few comments. They just look good, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
And they can
I
be
think
unframed. They can even be unframed, and they still look really nice on the wall, you know.
the really nice thing with canvas too is it's got that, like, you know, you've got that the texture of the canvas that can really sort of make the details and stuff like fur and things really kind of pop out a little bit more. That's Yeah, canvas is a good one. James, are you a paper or canvas guy?
Yeah, I would probably agree with canvas is probably my favorite for that type of thing. But we've had a few customers that have done like metallic paper prints with certain wildlife stuff that has looked fantastic, especially any water in the shot looks really, really good. So, yeah, it's going to depend per shot, but I think, yeah, for the most part, canvas for me as well too.
Yeah, any fish image will look good on metallic.
Yeah, I'm going to pull back my statement just a little bit. I've seen metallic prints with just sort of the clear background with just the silver underneath. But it was a shot of I'm assuming some kind of mallard with, you know, very, very bright and iridescent feathers on the head and just blue water underneath it. No horizon or anything. The photographer was quite high, but, you know, just blue water and this very kind of brightly colored mallard, and then the aluminum underneath was just making everything really pop and shine. And when the light hit everything just right, it glowed like a rainbow. It was incredible. Looked great. Oh.
That's good you said that, because I'm totally partial to metal prints for my wildlife. I find it does make those colors pop. The lesser yellow legs that I put up before with the water droplets, I have that on metal, and it's just stunning.
I think the blues in the background there, the water there, would really kind of pop. You know, I think for a lot of things, yeah, metal does have its place. I've seen great shots of just like frost patterns printed on metal that look really good. Would I use metal for like a shot of like a grizzly bear? Probably not.
Plus it's dripping wet.
It's good for things that have vivid colors.
Yeah. And a lot of contrast in those colors, right?
Yeah.
Like the greens and purples and in iridescent feather patterns and things like that. Yeah. And we've got sort of like a list of questions here, and something that sort of makes me perk up a little bit is film is coming back in a really, really big way, and film photography for doing wildlife, especially when things are sort of you know, a lot of it is luck, a lot of it is going to be trial and error. You know, it can get frustrating, it can get expensive as all get out. So do any of you guys have any tips, like not even necessarily the film, but like if someone's looking to get into wildlife photography with like a film camera, is there any particular one that you would pick for doing that kind of thing? Start with Collin.
Well, I mean, I would certainly get something that has a motor winder, not necessarily to be used in astroblast mode, but just so that you don't have to wind, right? So that it's always ready for the next shot. For sure, that's what I would go after, something like that. And of course, you're going to need a decently high-speed film, I would think, right? Most times, if you're out early or whatnot, you don't want to come back with a bunch of blurry images. I'd rather have a little bit of grain or noise and a clear shot than a blurry shot, you know? So that's two things I would try and make sure I keep in mind. And then learn light. You're going to have to be very conscious of lighting conditions and how they can change fast, because some of the older cameras don't have as good a metering system as some of the new stuff does. So you really have to pay attention to what you're doing exposure wise.
And you've got you know, you mentioned things like motor winders, and I think that you know, a lot of people remember sort of like the original Canon Rebel and things from like the Canon EOS line from like the 80s and 90s, where, you know, you had automatic film advancement and stuff like that. But I think there's quite a few film shooters that don't really know that, you know, for things as common as like the AE1, you can actually just get sort of battery powered motor attachments for that thing that just kind of go onto the bottom and will do automatic film advancement when you take each shot. And those are reasonably easy to find. Every once in a while we see them come in at 107th Avenue. I'm sure Collin sees them at Red Deer every once in a while too.
Yeah.
So it's good to keep your eyes out for
I mean,
those.
I used to use, well, I still use an F3, a Nikon F3, which has an accessory motor drive, which can do, I think it's 5 or 6 frames a second. But I can probably count on one hand how many times I've actually used it at that speed. It's usually just there, so it's ready for the next shot right away.
Yeah. And we've got a tip coming in from Shauna too, that using black and white film is a little bit better than using color when you're first starting out. I would say that there's actually some pretty good arguments for that. Black and white film is a hell of a lot cheaper. It's a hell of a lot easier to process yourself. So especially if you're like experimenting, it's really easy to get those results right away. Typically black and white film you've got available in a much wider ISO gamut, right? Like we've got ISO films that range all the way down from ISO 8 at the store all the way up to like 3200, and then even within that range, films like Ilford HP5 push really easily in either direction. So you can black and white film can be quite a bit more versatile and easy to shoot when you're doing that kind of thing. Burke or James, do you guys have any film experience with doing wildlife photography? Is there anything you want to point out there?
I haven't done a lot. I think there are certain things that it's really conducive to. Large, slow-moving targets, because you don't have the zoom range on the old film cameras for the most part that you do on the digital cameras. But something like the bison in Elk Island, black and white shots of the bison, especially in the winter, you don't need a lot of zoom range. They're not moving fast, so you have time to, you know, manually focus and compose your image and stuff. You can do some pretty spectacular stuff. Trying to do some of the birds and the things that I do, yeah, where I'm using, you know, 800,000 millimeter lenses. Most people don't have access to those for the old film cameras. You're lucky
Right.
if you have a 200 millimeter. So it does limit you in terms of what you can shoot, but I think you can do some really cool stuff within those limitations.
Burke
James, how about
mentioned
you?
Elk Island and bison, and I think I might have figured out actually how to share a photo. So I'm going to try it one more time. It's a bison in Elk Island on film.
What?
Well, look at that.
Damn.
There you go.
What a segue, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Look
perfect.
at that.
Ooh,
Yeah.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
See if we can zoom in a little bit on that too. And let's get some details. See if we can see any of that film grain.
Oh, hang on. I'm going to have to reshare that. I just took it off there. Sorry.
It's all, no worries.
Yeah, you can probably see the grain in it. I would have to think so. Yeah. Open photos. Just go back and share. It's not a full res file, I don't think.
Yep.
But nonetheless, if we zoom in, no,
Yeah,
it actually
there we
holds up.
go.
Holds up not too bad, I'd say.
Right on. And James, do you have any film tips or anything to share in that regard?
It's not something we ever shot with film wildlife. I think Bert covered most of it. Like, you're going to be larger animals, and especially with some of the older cameras, shutter speed on the old film cameras is going to be limited. So birds in flight and stuff like that are going to be pretty tough to get sharp photos of, at least anyway. So, but yeah, that's all I can really add to that. So.
Yep. I think a lot of people are sort of attracted to shooting medium format. They really like the idea of those larger format negatives and those the extra detail that you get out of that. I would say that unless you are profoundly patient and incredibly experienced, a lot of those medium format cameras, I would probably wait a little bit for. I've got quite a bit of experience with things like the RB67, a lot of TLR cameras, and they're slow, they're loud. You don't get very much zoom out of them. You have to remember that with those medium format cameras, you've got that crop factor that's kind of working against you for wildlife photography. So you're not getting nearly as much zoom out of that 100mm lens as you think you're getting. So I mean, the details that you get out of them are great, and I think maybe for like a herd or something, yeah, medium format's great. But if you're trying to catch a bird in flight, RB67 is not the one for you.
No, it would be good for sort of the environmental wildlife shots where you've got that panoramic river valley, and then you've got an elk standing in the water, or a bison standing in the river, where the wildlife is just one element of a bigger spectacular scene, as opposed to the wildlife being the sole focus of the image, because it is not conducive in terms of speed and mobility and all that good stuff to get that close wildlife shot.
An example of that I saw, one of my favorite wildlife photos was done by a fellow named Thomas Mengels, and I'm not sure if you guys know who that is, but he would shoot with a panorama 6x17, which is I think it sees 90 degrees. So it's a really wide angle lens. And he had a shot of a grizzly bear in Denali National Park in Alaska. The grizzly is tiny, tiny in that image, but it just shows his kingdom.
Yeah, his entire domain.
And
everything.
I know what a grizzly looks like up close, but to see him in that vast valley it's just an amazing photo. If you get a chance to look, it's probably online somewhere, I'm sure. And that's medium format.
Yeah. But I mean, he's probably even more experienced than me. So he knows what he's doing with those big heavy cameras for sure. Yeah. So
I was gonna share that. Remember that I talked about the mallards in flight, or the birds in flight? I'll just share that now because I told you the story, and now I figured out how you can share. So
there you go.
Jeez, speaking of wildlife, go away, bud.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. That's great. We are coming up to about the 5-minute mark before we wrap up our morning. I would basically just like to touch on a couple of things here. We, in June, to follow up our wildlife month, we've got our landscape month that's coming up. That means a new contest. So we'll be drawing for the wildlife contest on sometime early June. Remember that the deadline is on May 31st. So you still got a couple of days to do that. Looking out my window here, it looks like we've got a bright sunny day in Edmonton. Lots of sun. Looks like it's going to be nice and warm. So get out there, see if you can get some shots. See if you can get a drive out to Elk Island or something. But in June we'll have a new contest. Landscape contest. We'll also have a bunch of brand new presenters. We got they're not brand new. They know what they're doing, but this is the first time that we've had them on, I believe. We've got Paul Ziska from Canon, or with Canon, Monica Deviat with Nikon, Dave Brosha is going to be joining us with Sigma, and Mark Jinks with Nisi is going to be giving us some talks as well. So just really quick to wrap it up, I've got one more question to help to lead us into our landscape month. Everyone's going to be looking for great places to shoot. I've got the Crypt Lake Trail in Waterton behind me here. If you are out doing some landscape scouting, what are you looking for? When you go out, do you see the location? Do you see the light? Do you try and emulate the entire thing in your head? Do you try and formulate it all before you go there? What's your plan? Collin, let's start with you.
It's all about light. It better be exactly what you need for that subject. So sometimes that's flat midday light if you're looking for a stark look, or it's got to be that dramatic sunset, but it's all about light. And the way I look for a location is I always have those map books with me, and I look for little squiggly lines. And those little squiggly lines are roads that are going around and up and down things for a purpose. And that's usually where the exciting stuff shows up.
Right. And I mean, light is, especially when looking at landscapes and stuff, light is just about everything. It can completely change the mood of a photo. It can make a house look warm and inviting, or spooky and awful. Depends on how many clouds are in that sky, I guess.
Yeah. Even a daylight, well, right now I guess we got a few clouds showing up, but even a straight blue sky on midday, there's photos to be made. A lot of people used to say that, well, it's useless, just go out at sunrise and sunset. But no, there's ways of shooting at any time of the day.
Take
just different
pictures of the
style.
hard shadows. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. James, how about you? Anything you're looking for? Are you a mountains or a abandoned gas station guy with your landscape stuff? Or what's the deal?
Definitely more, mountains and everything else. But I would say do some scouting beforehand if you can too. Would probably be the most important, if you can, at least anyway, if it's not a new area to you. But yeah, like Collin said, the light is going to be the most important. So there's lots of good apps that can help you with that too. Just seeing where the sun will set and where it's going to sit. But yeah, scouting it, getting your composition ready before you go, because I think most landscape photographers, you have 5 to 10 minute window at most to kind of get a shot, and you kind of have to be ready for that. So yeah, I'd say scouting and preparedness is probably the best option, at least anyway.
Or not. And it looks like we got a last minute question from Fergus. He asks, can you guys give us an idea on the correct camera settings for shooting wildlife photos? Burke, let's start with you.
That depends on what wildlife, where, and when. For the most part, either because the animal is moving quite quickly, and that doesn't mean that it has to be running. For example, a red squirrel sitting on a branch, if it's agitated and squawking at you, if you look closely, its face is trembling at a very high frequency. So even for that, even though it's not running, it's not moving away from you, you need a high shutter speed.
60th of a second isn't going to cut it.
No, I usually start at around 1/1600th of a second. For certain things, like an owl sitting still, I'll go much slower. But as a rule, I start my camera offset at 1/1600th of a second, and then go up or down from there depending on the situation. Because with long lenses, you need the faster shutter speed to avoid camera shake as well. And a lot of things, even a bird sitting still, if there's a wind blowing, the feathers will move. A lot of debate. I have my camera set on auto ISO. It lets me just worry about shutter speed and aperture, and I'll let the ISO do what it wants. If it goes high enough, I'll use Topaz denoise and knock the noise down a bit. So yeah, that would be sort of my, in a nutshell, response to that question.
Any tips on correct settings from either Collin or James?
Burke covered them pretty well, but yeah, I tend to be shooting wide open, and I like the auto ISO thing too. I don't worry about a little bit of noise in an image. Again, I'd rather have a sharp, noisy image than a blurry, low ISO shot.
Yeah,
unless I'm after motion.
Yeah. Whether you're using like Lightroom or Topaz or any other denoiser that's out there nowadays, these algorithms that are being used for these things are just bonkers. Like I remember back in the days of Photoshop CS2 or 3, and you would hit the denoiser and it would just completely kill all of your detail. Like you would just lose everything in the photo. And these new denoisers that are coming out are just incredible at keeping all the detail. And I mean the cameras are really good at shooting high ISO with low noise anyway. So I mean, keep that ISO up. Let's keep those shutter speeds up.
Well, and fur and feather has a lot of texture and detail that a little bit of noise will actually enhance that and give some realism to it. So I never worry about that.
Yeah, and it's going to look better than a blurry photo anyway. So for sure, yeah.
I think it's actually, when I was still sort of behind the sales counter, or when I'm having questions about photography with friends that are just starting out and everything, it's kind of one of those really, really difficult questions that sort of it's difficult to actually approach very delicately, because, like, very bluntly, there is no correct setting, right? Like, the result is going to change, but just because like a photo being very dark with a lot of like kind of blown out highlights isn't necessarily a bad photo. It's a very, very high key photo. But I mean, you are the photographer, you are in creative control. This is your photo. But yeah, like for wildlife, I would say err on a little bit higher ISO so that you can get those higher shutter speeds. But as for trying to tell someone what the correct setting is, that is going to change. That is going to change by the shoot, by the day, by the minute, right? Yeah. And
one other point I would make would be to focus on the eye, and then if the depth of field falls off a little bit, your brain will compensate for that. As long as the eye is sharp, the rest falls into place naturally on an image.
And I mean, if especially erring on the side of higher shutter speeds and stuff, we were talking about how good cameras and the applications are getting at denoising, but especially, specifically when shooting with digital cameras, it's kind of the opposite with film. But there is so much detail in those shadows. If you shooting wildlife, shoot in RAW. You'll have much better luck bringing up your shadows and bringing down your highlights without killing all of your details. That would be the other big tip that I would give. All right. So we are just almost 7 minutes past the hour. We went a little bit longer than we were scheduled to, but it was a super, super fun discussion. I think this was a pretty successful first Saturday roundtable coffee session. So everyone, remember, you still got a couple of days. Get those wildlife photos in, and start planning out your landscape shots too, and see if you can get those into us. I want to say thank you very much to Collin from Red Deer, James in Lethbridge, and Wandering Soul Burke, who's in Sherwood Park today, usually at Southgate, I believe.
Yeah, Southgate Fridays and Sundays.
Yep. Right on. And that just about wraps us up. Thank you very much, you guys. Thank you for everyone who showed up. Thank you for the questions. That was a lot of fun.
Great. Thanks, Tyler.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a great day, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
No problem.
Okay, have a good one.
Thanks.
Back,
See ya.
back to work.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in, and hopefully you join us for our next roundtable for next month. Look forward to seeing you guys. Have a good one.